let's go.
A few years back, an archaeologist somewhere in a land far from California found some bones. They obviously, in this present day and time, they brought them to a lab. Obvious me dressed like Indiana Jones, you know. Looking like a broken ass Mummy Returns Brendan Fraser. So this lady brings the bones to the lab, right? She obviously gets them analyzed and finds out that these bones are 50,000 years old. They discovered these bones in Afghanistan. A country very old, ancient. It's been through a lot. It's been hurt, damaged. It doesn't have like a glorious win, kind of like America, where America was just kind of like, yes, it had its pitiful wars and its civil wars and its disruptions and wars within and all that stuff, politics and all that stuff, but America's been a one-shot thing, you know, separated from the British colonies, and boom, we are our own country. We didn't want to pay taxes, wanted to be our own people, wanted our freedom, which we got it. Thank God. And now you look at a country like Afghanistan, which is heavily being reported on the news today. You type in Afghanistan and boom, all the reports, CNN, everything is there. And me as an archaeologist, I gotta find out the truth. It's not just sitting back, being up in arms with everything, you know? A true American. Up in arms about everything. Ready to kill. Destroy whoever's in our way. Make peace. Show people the law. The way of the samurai. Behind all those motherfucking gimmicks and all that bullshit that the news is telling you, a lot of people are talking about, hey, just send a couple of good old Americans, like, we got the good guys over here on the land, and we just sent 20 years of just whatever soldiers over there that just really didn't give a shit about the cause. Afghanistan is called the land of the empire, of the graveyard of empires. So many people have fought on that land, conquered that land, had the land for some time, and got always overturned by a new leader, new conqueror, new tribesman, new whatever. Afghanistan is a country, of course, rich of many things, but it links the East and the West and the Europeans at the time. It was literally like Chicago for America, you know, it's in between. It's truly what they call what's in between. It's not directly what's in Iowa or whatever. It's gathering two different worlds and combining it as one. And truly, if you really want to understand what Afghanistan has gone through, let me tell you, stick around. Subscribe to the podcast, do whatever, but stick around, because this isn't something where you just let it go or sweep it under the rug or you say whatever it is that you want to say about the cause. Afghanistan is a fucked up place. It always been for years. Afghanistan has been around as far as 3000 BCE. It's a landlocked country. A lot of the people who conquered it at some time conquered way around Afghanistan that it was considered like its own little thing, you know. For like the Greeks that ruled it for about 300 years, it was just Afghanistan. It was far beyond that. It was also India as well. The upper territories of India, excuse me. So most of the conquerors ruled a good chunk of it, and eventually it got shrunken down by other conquerors that kind of put it in its landlocked way. By other countries wanted to kind of get their hold of that little terrain that's been fought over for so long in Europe. Afghanistan has been ruled over by Alexander the Great far back as 330 BCE. He obviously conquered it. If anybody's watched that movie Alexander or whatever, it's a good movie. Check it out with I forget that guy, Colin Farrell. Yeah, I think that's his name. That guy. So that guy, obviously, he was in that movie. Whatever. He obviously wasn't really Alexander the Great, but Alexander the Great did rule it for some time. Died really young, and led his predecessors to kind of rule it over. Kind of got disgruntled with tribes and stuff like that. People far out of Afghanistan is so fucking big. Those people wanted their own little state, so they fought. So within their own Greek, they fought within each other. Eventually kind of turning over. And the Maurys, Mauryas, the Maurys came in around 305 BCE. But that was also mixed with a lot of Greek stuff too. So they came in, did their thing for many, 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 many years. So the Greeks had a huge influence on Afghanistan, and still to this day, at the time, people were speaking Greek for thousands of years there. Drinking some delicious coffee. Oh, damn. So good. It's just crazy to talk about a place that's just been so screwed up by people. So obviously the Maurys, they the tongue twister tribe. They come in, do their thing, obviously, and then so those are like the younger influences at the time. You didn't really have the Christianities really out there just yet. Not really Buddhism just yet. You really just had like these Greek gods, sun gods, and all this stuff. So so many people are coming in with influences into Afghanistan. And finally, you have in around 870 CE, Christ's erection, or whatever the fuck that means. You got the Muslim Arabs coming in, then you finally got a really strong influence of religion coming into things. Now you have religion finally coming in, and countries are now being dominated by religion, being forced to do religion. Muslim country, Afghanistan became thoroughly more of a Muslim country, and finally you have a new Islamic leader, a new development and evolution in Muslim beliefs, kind of Islamic, and finally you have the Islamic influences there, which at the time the Islamic leaders did rule Afghanistan by forcing people to be Islamic. Now, is that a trait of the religion? I have no clue. But when it comes to Islam, they're very, very, very into their religion, and they really hold tight to their things, and there's really no margin for error, truly, from what I see. And then all that happens, you have a huge time period of Muslim and Arab wars going on, maybe possibly even Christian wars, who knows, going on in Afghanistan. So many wars, different influences. And then after Christ's death, way after that, at around 1219 AD, you have Genghis Khan, the Mongols coming in to basically take over and kick ass. They came in, obviously the Mongols didn't do anything nice. raped and pillaged and all that shit. Destroyed a lot of religious artifacts and all that stuff. The Muslims take it back from the Mongols. They still obviously fight with Islamic people, tribes around there. And that becomes kind of its country, still fought for so long, and kind of gets shaped into a landlocked until finally, way after, till about 17th century, you have British influences coming in. Now, the 17th century is around the time America is kind of getting their own independence, you know? So the British at the time was going through a huge conquering, where they obviously wanted to have a full-on expansion, where they went as far as Australia, India, islands, the Virgin Islands over there, I believe some other countries in South America. Obviously, they were going to the Americas at the time, using us as one of the 13 colonies to spread over to the Americas. They wanted to travel that way. The British were obviously conquering a lot of Europe at the time. Well, probably not, actually. And other things. So the British come in, and they wanted to start to disseminate these people of their religions. They start trying to put in their influences. They put in their coup. And at that time, when it's so crazy that the Mongols have such a big influence in Afghanistan because they ruled for such a long freaking time. Because they weren't just there. When I say the Mongols came in, I didn't mean like they came in for a couple of years. The Mongols came in for fucking years, where they had Afghan descendants who have Mongol mixture descendants eventually converting to being Muslim, and finally some of them even converting to be Islamic, and they're having these huge wars. So it's people with every war that goes on, you get this mixture of blood, and eventually the people who stay in Afghanistan choose a side. And it's usually the side who's the most strongest and who gets the help from the most allied forces. And it's so strange that finally, after around the beginning of the Mongol time, you start to see how influences and the mixtures of bloods really start to divide people. Mongols mixing in because of the rapes and all that stuff, people growing in those villages and all that stuff, and maybe marriages and all those things, princes marrying kings and stuff, and queens, whatever. You finally have Mongols mixing in with the blood, and that becomes a normality. Finally, you have British influences that come in, and they kind of develop this coup where they're trying to take over this already established Arab empire, because this is well established because Afghanistan was already involved in the Silk Road, which is a huge link to China and to the Europeans. It was one of the biggest links to the East and Western culture when it came to trade. Without Afghanistan being kind of a neutral place for foreigners to kind of commingle, how can you have the development of Afghanistan? How can you even have the development of the Middle East, the trade, the influences, the religion, all the politics that went behind that history? All those things contribute to this history of Afghanistan. So anyways, the British influence coming with their coup. They put in some type of predecessor that was Muslim. And that guy obviously comes into power for many, many years. Looking over my notes, sorry guys. Fast forward from the 17th century onto the 19th century, 18th century. You have British influences obviously staying in India. Not till 1919, Afghanistan declares itself as its own country. Okay, finally, after so goddamn long of truly dealing with all this shit, And every country, even also dealing with the same thing, right? Russia, whatever, Europe, Italy, America, everyone finally get their own cut. It's on a map now. In 1919, Afghanistan finally receives its independence, declares its independence. And World War I happens. And you kind of get this pressure from Axis, from German forces. Well, they're kind of not German, but how can you explain it was not German, but Ottoman Empire, you know? So you get these influences from those people trying to push Afghanistan to join because they were helping them, right? Influencing them, giving them money, helping them with the war, whatever, with goods and trading, because they were exclusively trading with them. Afghanistan refuses, gets out of it. But they didn't really like that. And the people within started kind of talking about that, the politicians and everybody. And finally, during the World War I, the Brits kind of get into that. That's where that coup came in. They kind of get the person assassinated there, and you finally get a new kind of British India. And at that time, obviously, British was messing with the people from India, segregating them and all that stuff, separating them by their religion and whatever the hell they were doing. And then the unrest of World War I kind of happens, and then the countries kind of in Europe kind of settle in, Germany and all that stuff, and you finally get World War II. And at that time, Russia is pressuring, Russia's kind of influencing Afghanistan to kind of get into this war now. And the United States get a hint of it. And this kind of comes into this weird proxy war for many years, and influenced the Afghanistan war. Well, that's what, sorry man, I'm kind of screwing up here. In 1919, the Anglo-Afghan War made their independence. But a little bit with World War II is you have influences from Russia training Afghanistan warriors and exclusively training with Afghanistan. And it wasn't Russia, it was considered the Soviet Union at that time. This is well after World War II. In 1978, so pretty much between World War I, Afghanistan basically didn't want to get involved, right? Afghanistan went through some coups with British even during that time, and World War II happened, and they still didn't want to get involved. After World War II, Afghanistan started training a lot with Russia. And all the way through the 60s and 70s, and you probably see pictures online, and it looks like Afghanistan is this completely peaceful place. Women are going to school and all this stuff. There's no killings, there's no bombings, there's no nothing. You've probably seen the pictures of women before in the 70s and 60s completely looking gorgeous and all that stuff in Afghanistan. You fast forward, and now women are wearing coverings all the way from head to toe. The reason why this kind of all came to be is that you kind of had this weird proxy war with Afghanistan being the center stage. You have Russia, which was at the time Soviet Union, working with Afghanistan, main socialist, democratic party at the time, which was called the Democratic Party for Afghanistan, the PDPA. So they came in 1978 and basically, boom, took over. Russia started stepping in and started helping them, influencing them in their politics. It started getting ugly for Afghanistan. Wars, rapings, completely screwing up the country. So, Pakistan and the US get involved in this war. It becomes called the Soviet-Afghan War. So the US starts to help a rebel army that's in Afghanistan around 1978. And they help this army, and it's called the Mujahideen. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. So the Pakistani army and the US government are pumping money and everything into this war, making sure that Afghanistan gets totally overturned, that the PDPA gets overturned. And basically it was a war that went on for about 9 years. 5,62,000 people died. And the Soviet army finally withdrew. It's a costly war. They gave up. That was it. Did they have to have a lot to do with the aftermath of Vietnam? Of course. Did they have to do with a lot of the stuff that could have happened in the future? Yeah, that was a great move probably by the U.S. stopping that from happening. Who knows what Afghanistan would have been, having that type of rule. Finally, you get into a point where now, what do you make of a country with civil unrest, with problems, with issues? I'm no political science major or anything, or whether I can tell, or I'm a strategic person. Who could tell you the future on these military problems? What I do know is that Afghanistan is going to obviously go through a lot of reshaping, and no matter how the Taliban paints the situation, we all know that it's going to go south. With governments and seeing things like North Korea and other places around the world and places like in Africa that are just going to shit, you obviously can't really do anything but sit back and watch, especially the government. We sat back and watched our government got involved, we critiqued them. Now it's time to both of us to sit back and see how Afghanistan does, and is it truly our problem? Is it the US problem? Is it a global issue? Do you believe that we really have to get involved? Well, maybe. I kind of feel that just like in any relationship, if you break up, it's not easy, right? You can't just pull out and run off. You're gonna have to deal with the fact that you did run off, and that person's gonna go looking for you, right? And so hopefully Afghanistan doesn't come looking for us, comes to our homeland. How can you predict something like that? And the Afghanistan people probably have a lot of problems right now dealing with whatever they're dealing with, and you have to have sympathy for that, to be honest. No matter what was going on there, it's just what the news painted us to see. If you look at YouTube videos, and this is another point that I want to bring up, is that if you look at videos of people visiting Afghanistan, tourism, things out there, there's tons of it, and you'll see that Afghanistan is not what people think it is. It's not a place where it's just bombings and shit like that. I mean, that's there, but there is a million people there. Millions. I think 4.6 million people live in Afghanistan. I mean, That's a lot of people, man. And that's a lot of heads, and they all live in their way, man. And they all find some way to be happy. And we too, as Americans, find some way to be happy and don't even live in a government as oppressed as them. We got to do what we have to do to be strong as individuals, politically understand what's going on around us, but also, take a viewpoint whereas you always don't have to do everything about it. Some countries live in their turmoil or their peace, and it's not necessarily our problem unless they want to start beef with us, right? So again, from the Just Call It podcast, I really hope and pray that Afghanistan becomes better as a nation, finds more more of a peaceful place. People can practice their things in peace, and hopefully they don't have to bomb each other and go through civil unrest for so many years like other countries around that area. But if that's unfortunately that's their demise to come for many, many years, who knows what we will see, our kids' to see. Who knows, we may go back. But let's hope that, it's all good and shit, man. They don't come over here while a fucking bomb pops up out of nowhere. Boom! I just go on live television. Alright guys, thank you very much for the Just Call It podcast. I love you guys very much for checking it out. Please subscribe to the podcast. Listen on Spotify, listen on Apple Music, listen to YouTube. Check me out. I'm going to have some guests try to come on soon, and hopefully get some more exciting stuff out there for you guys to see. Thank you very much for checking it out, and have a nice day.